Welcome, everyone, to the Deep Dive. This is Complete Aviation Solutions Deep Dive number 106. Today, we're setting our sights on, well, three pretty distinct but really impactful global aviation stories, all very recent. We've got some fascinating material here that gives a great snapshot of just how dynamic things are. So our mission, basically, is to unpack these key developments. We're talking geopolitical shifts hitting airspaces, big regulatory changes in one country's aviation sector, and a major business transformation in air cargo. We want to pull out the key bits so you can quickly get what's going on. Okay, let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. These sources really highlight the different kinds of pressure the industry is under right now and the strategic thinking needed. What's really striking is just how fast things can happen, and how quickly everyone needs to adapt. We'll dig into the specifics, see what happened, and importantly, the immediate ripple effects.
Okay, let's start with that big geopolitical one,
Yeah.
where tensions literally change flight paths. Our sources are talking about airspaces in Iraq and Israel reopening after a ceasefire. That was June 24th, 2025.
Right, a critical development for the region.
A tentative step back towards normal, maybe?
Yeah.
But getting there was definitely not simple.
No, definitely not. And there's a key detail. Iranian airspace, according to what we're seeing, it stays restricted. International flights only get in with prior approval from Iran's Civil Aviation Authority. So that nuance is really important for understanding the operational headaches that are still there, even with a ceasefire elsewhere.
And the backstory here, it really gets dramatic. The actual airspace closures, they started way earlier, June 13th. So let's see if I have this right chronologically. Israel, later joined by the U.S., starts airstrikes against Iran. Iran responds, predictably. Then June 23rd, to the day before things started reopening, you get Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE. They completely close their airspace.
Wow.
And Saudi Arabia puts in partial closures. This was all after an attack on Doha Al Udeid in Qatar. Big U.S. deployment there. That's a lot happening very fast.
Yeah.
Less than 2 weeks.
It really is. And it brings up that big question, right? When skies in a volatile area suddenly shut down like that, how do airlines cope? Especially the national carriers. What's the immediate plan? Our sources actually give some specific examples, and they show just how different the responses can be.
Absolutely. Look at the Israeli carriers. Their strategies were all over the place. Take Israel Airlines. They announced they'd restart more routes, not just those limited rescue flights they've been doing since June 18th.
Right.
And crucially, they also lifted that 50-passenger cap they'd put on flights. That's a big signal moving towards recovery. They said they'll prioritize passengers whose flights got canceled first, the pre-registered ones, then open up general sales after July 22nd. And just for context, L's pretty big, 53 planes, 56 destinations, almost 100 daily flights out of Tel Aviv. But then you look at Israel. They canceled all scheduled flights until July 7th. Only rescue flights until then.
A much more cautious approach.
Yeah. And Arkia Israeli Airlines, even more cautious, suspended everything scheduled until at least the end of June. Big contrast with LA, Al. Meanwhile, Air Haifa, smaller player, they resumed ticket sales for Haifa to Larnaca on June 25th, aiming for normal operations by July 1st. So really varied.
It's fascinating, isn't it, how different their risk calculations must have been. And then you have Iraqi Airways starting a gradual resumption on June 25th as their airspace reopened. But, and this loops back to what I mentioned, scheduled flights in, to, or from Iran still suspended. So if you zoom out, the way these different carriers reacted really underlines something important for airlines everywhere. There's no single crisis playbook. Airline size, its financial health, its passenger mix, all that really dictates different recovery speeds and how much risk they can take, even in the same basic situation.
Okay, so from conflict zones affecting flight paths, let's switch gears completely.
Yeah.
Let's look at how financial policy, which can seem kind of dry, can send shockwaves through an entire industry. We're heading to Kenya now.
Yeah, new government policies there could really reshape their aviation scene. What's grabbing headlines is the proposal to bring back value-added tax, VAT, plus import declaration fees, IDF, and the Railway Development Levy, RDL. And these aren't just small fees. They're being proposed for aircraft themselves, spare parts, even maintenance services. It's a big deal, and industry groups are not happy.
No, the Kenya Association of Air Operators, KAAO, they've been very clear. They're warning this will mean higher operating costs, obviously, and that it'll make the Kenyan aviation sector less competitive. Stands to reason, right? More taxes mean higher expenses. They also really believe it could scare off investment and slow down the recovery from COVID, which is still ongoing for many.
Yeah, the KAO was pretty blunt. They said it risks stifling connectivity and, by extension, economic growth for the whole country. And they didn't just complain, they actually submitted a formal memo back in May to the Parliament's Finance and Planning Committee, urging them basically drop these proposals. They specifically pointed out that getting rid of long-standing VAT exemptions would massively hike up costs for buying planes, getting them serviced.
Right.
And it affects more than just passenger travel, air cargo, pilot training, the growing drone sector, even essential stuff like emergency medical flights. It really makes you think, doesn't it? This isn't just about airline balance sheets. It shows how even seemingly small tax policy tweaks can suddenly put a nation's key industries in a tough spot, affecting jobs, growth, and maybe even public mood.
And there's a definite political angle here, too. On June 19th, the Parliament did approve the bill overall, but interestingly, they rejected a request from the Revenue Authority for, unrestricted access to taxpayer data.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, citing privacy concerns, constitutional issues. It feels like the government is trying to tread carefully. They really want to avoid what happened last year.
The protests.
Exactly. Massive protests against tax hikes then, over 60 deaths reported. And the president eventually had to back down on plans to raise around $2.7 billion in taxes. So the sensitivity around these new proposals is extremely high.
You can see why. And for a major airline like Kenya Airways, they operate 40 aircraft, serve 54 destinations, 77 routes, average about 109 daily flights from Nairobi.
Yeah, big operation.
For them, these potential cost hikes could seriously impact their strategy, their competitiveness in East Africa and beyond. Expansion plans, maybe even just maintaining current service levels, could get a lot harder.
Okay, so while governments grapple with taxes, the industry itself keeps moving, adapting to stay competitive. Our last story today is about that. It takes us to Mexico. A major strategic rebranding in air cargo there aims squarely at boosting global connections. We're talking about AeroUnion rebranding as Avianca Cargo Mexico.
Yeah, this is a pretty clear strategic play. The company itself said the goal is to align better with the wider network and capabilities of its parent companies, Avianca Cargo and Avianca Airlines. It's a classic move, really. Reflects how important integrated logistics and just having that seamless network access is in the cargo world today. They want to leverage that bigger, more recognized Avianca brand.
But here's what's kind of interesting. Despite the new name, the sources are really clear that the Mexican carrier's actual business structure, its operating permits, its management, that all stays the same. It's going to continue operating independently. So it sounds more like a strategic alignment, using the brand power rather than a full-on merger or takeover.
Yeah.
Keeping its Mexican identity, perhaps.
I think that operating independently part makes a lot of sense when you look at the ownership. Avianca Holdings has had a stake in AeroUnion since 2014, an undisclosed amount. But it came when its subsidiary Tampa Cargo, which is now Avianca Cargo, bought a minority share. And our sources mentioned that Mexican law actually caps foreign ownership of local airlines at 49%. So that legal cap probably explains why they'd keep the operations independent. It lets them stick to the law while still getting the benefits of the partnership shared efficiencies, maybe, and definitely that brand recognition boost.
So practically speaking, what about their planes? What does the fleet look like now?
Well, AeroUnion, or Avianca Cargo Mexico, now operates 2 Airbus A330 converted freighters. They just got the latest one on June 20th, 2025. And just last year, they retired their older planes, Boeing 767s and Airbus A300 freighters.
Okay, so a clear shift.
Definitely. It's a move to a younger, standardized Airbus fleet, which, by the way, mirrors what Avianca Cargo uses. They fly 6 A330-200 factory freighters. So yeah, it's textbook fleet modernization, better efficiency, easier maintenance with commonality, and definitely helps with that global brand alignment. Choosing those A330 converted freighters really signals they're serious about modern air cargo capacity.
So wrapping this all up, what's the big picture takeaway from these 3 stories? We've seen just how fast geopolitics can redraw the map for air travel, forcing airlines into really different responses based on their own situations. We've also seen how domestic policies, like that finance bill in Kenya, can create major headwinds for a whole national sector, potentially hitting costs, competitiveness, and even sparking public pushback.
Right.
And then we saw how strategic business decisions, like the AeroUnion rebrand in Mexico, along with fleet upgrades, are crucial tools for boosting global reach in cargo, even when navigating tricky ownership rules.
Yeah, if you connect those dots, it really paints a picture of an industry that's just constantly adjusting, doesn't it? It's navigating this really complex mix of international relations, national economics, shifting business models. The data we looked at shows incredible resilience, adaptability, sure, but also really diverse challenges popping up all over the globe, demanding very specific, often very quick responses. It's way more complex than just, rerouting a plane.
Absolutely. This deep dive has given us, I think, a really fascinating look, both zoomed in and zoomed out, at how everything from ceasefires to tax laws to new paint jobs actually impacts the skies and the businesses operating in them every day.
And maybe this leaves you, our listener, with a question to think about. Given all these varied pressures we've discussed, sometimes pushing in opposite directions globally, how might these seemingly separate regional events actually combine to shape bigger trends in global aviation? Particularly thinking about route networks, operating costs, maybe those strategic partnerships we saw. Will we see more fragmentation, maybe? Or will the push for global integration win out despite all these challenges? What do you think?
Definitely something to chew on. We hope this deep dive gave you some valuable insights, maybe some surprising details too. Until next time, keep exploring.